Hey everyone, welcome back to the range. My name is Matt, also known as the King of Armor Destruction, the Armor Wizard, Zap, and today also known as A.A.R.O.N. You done messed up A.A.R.O.N? Maybe. We have a body armor demo today, that's why you tuned in. This is actually a retest of our Highcom 4SAS4 plate. This is a level 4 from Chase Tactical private label. Let's throw this guy on the table and take a look at what we're going to do today. Now, in full transparency, I got 4 of these plates from a follower, as well as Chase Tactical sending an additional 6 for us to test. As I mentioned, these are a private white label of the Highcom 4SAS4 plate. Now, if you didn't see the original video that I launched a couple of weeks ago, the performance of this particular plate wasn't too hot. I'll either leave the link in the description below, or we'll just leave up the summary results here. Effectively, the engineers at Highcom believe that by me drop testing these particular plates, they were never engineered to survive a drop test. I fully compromised the ceramic strike face, even though they passed a torque test. In reality, the only way to ensure that there isn't any huge cracks in these plates is to x-ray them. Highcom was kind enough to provide me with the last OBL, or Oregon Ballistics Lab testing, from a set of these 3 plates where they stopped our M2 armor piercing, one shot, mind you, at 2880 plus or minus 30 feet per second, as well as some internal testing documentation from October of 2023 showing that multiple sets of these plates were able to stop 6 hits of M193, M855, 7.62x39 mild steel core, as well as, I do believe, 2 hits of our 7.62x54R mild steel core. This 4SAS4 plate is a 10x12 shooter's cut multi-curve. It weighs approximately 7.3 pounds. I do have one outlier around 7.4. It's around 775 thousandths thick. As I mentioned, it is multi-curve. You can see that curve right there and right there, and usually sometimes with the Highcoms we get an additional curvature down there as well. If this is the first time you're viewing my YouTube channel, we do all of our body armor demos completely different than everyone else on YouTube. I'm after worst case scenario. Say it with me again. Matt, we're after worst case scenario. Good job, everybody. Since this is rifle armor, we shoot at 45 feet. We also shoot at 0 degrees, but again, that is worst case scenario. We use a giant clay briefcase filled with Roma Plastilina #1 clay from Chavant. That acts as our compressible media, and it's a giant structure to solidly mount the body armor up against, so we're not throwing it up against a dirt pile or on some kind of steel target that can bounce back and forth and lose some of that energy. Again, we're after worst case scenario. Now, the NIJ and internal labs heat that clay up to 100 degrees, and they drop this like 2.5-inch ball on it to measure the dimple and certify that clay. It's 45 to 50 degrees outside today, and once I take it out of my little igloo down there, the temperature starts to drop, so we're looking at a representation of what backface could be. If we see something like 60 millimeters in my clay and the NIJ's certified clay, that probably would be failing. From the previous test, we saw very little backface on this particular design, so I'm not too concerned about the follow-up testing in terms of backface on this particular plate. Now, this is where we got into trouble last time. Per the NIJ 06 and 07 standards, which this plate was not designed for, I would normally drop each plate on its face 2 times as a preconditioning test. Now, that's, again, worst case scenario, and as I mentioned, the Highcom engineers feel that that fully compromised this plate. So what I've done this time is I've only dropped 2 of these 10 plates on its face 2 times as a preconditioning test. One plate we're not going to shoot at all, that we've marked inspect, and we're going to tear that apart, or at least the best of my ability when we're done with this, to see what kind of cracking we induced on this plate. Now, the other one, I picked up some drop face foam from another vendor. This is around 4 ounces and maybe 1/4 of an inch thick, and we put that on the front of the plate, and we drop that one 2 times on its face, and we're still going to see if it will stop our M2 armor piercing. If I forgot to mention, this plate employs a full edge-to-edge ceramic strike face, meaning that for this 10x12 size, it's actually a little under 10x12. It's more like 9.5 by 11.5. The ceramic strike face will extend almost all the way out to the complete edge. The NIJ will never shoot closer than 2 to 3 inches on the edge unless specified by the manufacturer. When you're looking at plates and you're seeing some plates that are abnormally lighter than others, that's typically because they employ a foam ring on the outside, and that if you had a 10x12 plate, you may only have 8x10 or sometimes 7x9 inches of ceramic coverage on that plate. So it's a good thing when manufacturers are producing edge-to-edge ceramic strike faces. We also use a chronograph whenever possible, a Pro Chronopal Digital DLX, as well as a Garmin 0C1. A big thank you to Bass Pro Shops for sending that out, because we needed to know the velocity of these particular rounds. I've said it many times in my videos, and I'll mention mention it again, the NIJ M2 armor piercing threat standard is 2880 feet per second plus or minus 30. They actually use a 30-inch universal receiver to get that kind of velocity. The NIJ 04 and 05 standard actually was only 2850 plus nothing minus 30. This 4AS4 plate has been threat validated to that 06 standard, but was not subjected to a drop test and or submersion preconditioning test. And finally, we put a spreadsheet here at the beginning and the end, and we kind of foreshadow the threats that we're going to shoot at it. We mark our velocities and our penetrations, and we're going to do a tear down at the end. I do want to remind everyone that I'm not an NIJ lab. Again, say it with me, Matt is not an NIJ lab. Good job, everyone. So if you see a threat stopped or penetrated over here, you should always defer to the manufacturer to produce accredited and recent lab results showing those stoppages. Now, there is some weird ITAR regulations that they may not be able to share that information publicly, and some companies do and some don't. Again, defer to Highcom if there is an issue that arises here. I do ride the fine line at times between the standards and going above and beyond because I want to replicate worst case scenario. So that you guys buy this stuff, you know, there are consumers who are buying this and they want to get the best bang for the buck, you know, most protection that money can buy. And or on the flip side, they don't have a lot of money, so they want to buy something and ensure that it's going to stop some and then some. And when I do testing, sometimes I only get 2 plates because manufacturers at times don't want to work with me. And I have to place as many of those hits on a plate as possible. And depending on the standard, like for M2 armor piercing, the plate only has to stop that one shot of M2 armor piercing, and that's it. And in a lab environment, they're going to go get a fresh plate, and they're going to then test the multi-hit scenario with those other lesser threats. So I have to put a lot of threats on plates, and sometimes after the 5th or 6th hit, we're seeing penetrations. And that doesn't mean that the plate is necessarily bad. I've just taken it beyond its design limits. There are certainly people who will build their plates to, quote unquote, let's say mil spec, and that's the standard and nothing more, maybe a little bit. And there are other companies who will build well above that, and sometimes that's reflected in the price or the weight or thickness, and that's what I try to highlight here. I try to do these demos without too much manufacturer input besides, you know, say our standards, because I don't want to look like I softballed or, you know, cream puffed this particular plate to make it look good, and then somebody's going to go out and say, well, they paid you to make that plate look good. If that were ever the case, I would certainly state that up front because I offer as much transparency as possible. I also do R&D work for manufacturers who are looking to take their plates to the extreme. Plate number 1 is strapped in and ready to go. We have a few different scenarios that we want to shoot this plate to see how multi-hit capable it is. It is an older design, and as I mentioned, it's just that one shot of M2 armor piercing. So we've got our 163 grain full metal jacket, armor piercing M2 AP. I have it loaded in 300 Winchester Magnum, not because this particular load is a piston hot load, but the velocity spec is 2880, and this is how I can do it with a 24-inch barrel and not a 30-inch universal receiver. 2878 per the Garmin, 2883 per the light screen, so that is in spec. All right, easy enough. Shot number 1 right there, so we're not going to have any doubt on marks in the clay or any armchair commandos. Place those bets in the comments below. Helper hand. No pass-through, folks. And the back face and or lack thereof on that is very, very impressive. That, I would say, as the previous video, is the advantage to this E-glass backer, is less back face deformation. Continuing on with plate number 1, now we're going to see how it will do against 5.56 threats. We're going to shoot our M193. It's a 55 grain full metal jacket. It is known for popping steel. That's where under the new 07 standard steel is going to fall short because the velocity spec is 3250. Now, because I'm using a 22-inch barrel, we will usually see above that specification, but again, I'm after worst case scenario. Dot. All right, easy enough. Shots of M193 number 1, 2, 3, and then 4. And then we did come down and check the plate. My wife said, let's shoot 2 more at it. So number 5 and number 6, place those bets in the comments below. Oh, Raggy. We finally had a penetration from that 5th shot of our M193 down there. Now that is closer than the 4 shot there. So it could be that the way that crack propagation occurs on these plates, that might have been compromised for this particular design. And as I mentioned, the E-glass is not good at stopping anything with significant mass or speed after the ceramic strike face. And this was beaten flat, so that is a penetration there. Plate mark number 10 is strapped in and ready to go. We're going to shoot the exact same threat pattern that we did plate number 1. This plate has been dropped on its face 2 times. We added that strike face foam to it. I'm asking the manufacturer if it is commercially available or if you have to buy like a large roll of it. But effectively, if you put this in a plate carrier and your plate carrier has any padding, that could suffice for some drop face foam protectant. In reality, don't belly flop on these plates. And now for our M193, back to the 22-inch TC compass. Looks like our velocity from the light screen is failing us because of the angle of the sun. I'll have to see if I can do anything about that. M2AP shot was right there. As I mentioned, I think the light screen is being affected by the sun, so the velocity was like 100 feet below spec, but I would trust the Garmin more than our M193 number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. So this is pretty much almost identical. Oh, Raggy, we have 1 penetration again from the M193. There's a hole there on that shot right there, which is 2 inches from that shot, but that was actually the 3rd shot that penetrated. So I would say maybe that shot compromised this plate enough that it caused that penetration, but the 6th shot was stopped. So it looks like, you know, I have to admit full responsibility that, as the engineer said, me dropping these on their face as the preconditioning test, that plate, this plate is not designed to handle that and likely caused our penetrations. Plate numbered 2 is strapped in and ready to go. This one we're going to shoot M2AP at it again, center of mass, and then we're going to shoot some M855 at it. So again, center of mass, 2874, 2873. Now for our 556 threat, this is our M855 or SS109 62 grain lead core with a conical steel penetrating tip. Typically steel and ceramic strike faces, if thick enough, will stop this just fine. Pure polyethylene plates are what this is a problem for. Again, we've got the 22-inch TC compass. Easy enough. M2AP right there. Then our M855 number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. Place those bets in the comments below. No pass-throughs, folks. Now we do have a little bit of dimpling from that M2AP shot, but again, looking at the official lab documentation's back face was 30 millimeters or less on their testing. Very, very impressive. Now, like I said, we got to ride that fine line of I could probably put 3 more shots on this plate, but at this point, I think based on the prior testing, this strike face is compromised enough that we should call it. Plate Mark 3 is ready to go. M2AP again, but we're going to switch to M855A1 this time, Mr. Spicy Boy. 2909, so that is 1 feet per second below the max variance allowed. Now into our Spicy Boy. This is our 556 NATO or 556 by 45 millimeters. This is our M855A1. The evolution to M855, it's got a copper core and a harder and larger, that's what she said, steel penetrating tip. These are very, very nasty to stop, especially at our full spec velocity. Shot of our M2AP was right there. It was a little lower. I wanted to shoot a bit up there, but our M855A1, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Place those bets in the comments below. Oh, Raggy. Only 1 penetration, again from that lower corner. But otherwise, all those threats are stopped. Back face is very minimal to non-existent. There you have it, folks. Looks like these are doing a lot better on the second go-around since we didn't drop them. My fault, my bad. Sorry, everyone. Plate mark number 4 is ready to go. We're going to depart from our armor piercing threats to go to the level 3 standard, which is M80 balls, 145, 150 grain full metal jacket. This particular Lake City Winchester surplus is a bimetal jacket, meaning that the jacket has some kind of ferrous material in it that attracts the magnet, and it could be argued that that is a harder jacket to stop than a brass or copper. 2793, 2797, 2792, easy enough. Shots number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. I wanted 6, and I should have just done the NIJ hit pattern, which was 2, 4, 6, but place those bets in the comments below. Oh, R.A.N.G.E. We have penetrations from the 3rd and 4th hit, but that 5th shot, we'll double check, but it looks like it was stopped. But what happens is it looks like it pushed out the bottom corner and it makes it look like a penetration, but I don't see an actual hole through the plate there, just some breaking of that backer. So there you have it, and that plate is pretty much done. Plate marked 5 is ready to go. We're gonna go back to our M2 armor piercing, but we're gonna simulate some range. So I've loaded our M2 armor piercing in our 308 casings, and we've got a 16-inch here. So we've got our M2 armor piercing as well as P80 black tip. That's another round that this plate is rated for, I do believe, probably in a single hit fashion. That's like M2 AP, but the core is not as long compared to that one. Center of mass, 2638, so that is 250 feet per second below spec. And now our P80 black tip, 2608, 2586, 2634. Easy enough. M2 AP shots number 1 and 2, then the P80 number 1 and 2. This was the 2nd hit on the plate, 3rd and then 4th hit. Place those bets, comments below. Oh, R.A.N.G.E. We have confirmed penetrations from the 2nd hit of M2 AP and both P80 black tips. I wonder, again, like I said, the multi-hit scenario rating of this plate only applies to these lesser threats. I'm gonna guess P80 black tip is probably that center of mass, and that's it. Plate 6 is ready to go. We're gonna shoot some Russian threats at it. This is 545 by 39 millimeters. It's a 24-inch SSG 82, so this is, maximum real world velocity. I do believe there is an RPK in 545. We have 2 variants here, 7N6, that's a 52 grain mild steel core penetrator, as well as a 7N6M for modernized. It's usually post 1992 Bulgarian is where I find it. This has the same core, but it's hardened to right around 59-60 on the C scale. Our buddy Deacon will be taking these 6 shots. 30-63, 30-40, 30-58, 30-13, 31-28, quite a discrepancy today. 31-26, no reading off the light screen. 2 more hits on this plate, then we'll go check it out. This is our 7.62 by 3.9. We've got a 20-inch SKS, so again, maximum real world velocity. We've got our East German mild steel core that is very common over there, a mild steel core bullet, mainly probably because it's cheaper to get steel than lead. These should be right around 2450 to, I think, 2500 feet per second. The NIJ spec for NIJ 07, I think, is 2450. 3 hits of this. 25-13, pretty spicy off those guys. Good shooting, Deacon. He would like to remind you all to like and subscribe and share so that we can get that algorithm working for us. 7N6, number 1, 2, and then 3. He placed that one pretty darn close. Then our 7N6M, number 1, 2, and then 3. Then our mild steel core was right there. That was actually an edge shot. That's on me for the offset. And then the 2nd shot was down there. Place those bets in the comments below. No pass-throughs, folks. Now, like I said, this is because of the ceramic shooting backwards from that shot. And there's a little bit of back face there. But There are no penetrations in the back of the plate, but it's pretty much well shot up. Plate mark 7 is ready to go, and now I want to test the true multi-hit capability of this plate, so to speak. We have a level 3A backer behind this. Now, some in the comments below and in the various posts I made argued for and against adding a 3A backer, and ultimately you can get some 3A backers for pretty cheap at times, and they only will add sometimes upwards of maybe a pound to your entire system weight. Some people's carriers or systems may already have 3A built into them, like an IOTV. So I want to just add this to see where we're going to be at. You know, all the previous plates today have stopped our 5.56 threats M193, M855, and M855A1, at least 4 to 6 hits of them. So we've got the fresh plate. If this isn't multi-hit, I don't know what is. Our M193, number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then M855, number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then the A1, 1, 2, and 3. Now, people who like steel armor will say, you can soak up shots of 5.56 all day with steel. Well, you could with M855. But when you get into M193, especially at that 3250 and plus, that's where it starts losing out. And some of the harder steel, as we've seen in my testing, gets brittle. So you could shoot 3 shots of M193 at it, and it'll stop it at the spec velocity, but we actually then crack the plate. Place those bets in the comments below. No pass-throughs, folks. 13 rounds of maximum real-world value 5.56 without going to a 24-inch or going to 22 Creedmoor. And we didn't bring that out today, but we stopped them all. Our 3A backer is still alive. There are no penetrations through that. Plate mark number 8 is ready to go, and we're going to close this one out pretty quick, hopefully. We've brought out our M2 armor piercing again, but in its native chambering. This is 30-06 Springfield. We've got a 24-inch 1903 A3. So if you wanted to equate this, this would actually be the get off my lawn scenario where you were at contact distance with someone with an M1 Grand or 1903 A3 and they're using surplus ammunition. As I mentioned before, typically you won't see the 2880 feet per second from that, and we've shown that, and we'll show it again today. Now, while it is next to impossible for me as a U.S. citizen to acquire the new and improved steel core and tungsten core 545 by 39 variants, I figured this would be a good approximation for best performance possible in an AP round in a 22 caliber, at least in conventional military loadings. This is our M995 armor piercing that is 52 grain tungsten core made by Nemo. Then we have some R.A.N.G.E or Swiss P full metal jacket hardcore tungsten again, but it has a lead backer. The core is not as long as the M995, so it'll be interesting to see what we get out of this. 3421, 2962. Now we brought out something for shits and giggles. This is our 8.6 black. This particular cartridge fires 338 caliber projectiles with an ultra-fast twist rate 1 in 3, so we can use a lot of different 338 Lapua bullets, but the key is because of that twist rate, if you make them go faster than subsonic, you can spin the jackets off of them. So majority of the loadings that I've developed are subsonic. I picked up these bullets from War Pig Armory. This is a 260 grain armor piercing incendiary. It has a titanium tip on it to give you a marking ability like an API. There is no powder in there that has an incendiary effect. We've got a 260 grain full metal jacket tungsten core round, and then a 250 50 grain brass solid. That was from Fort Scott Munitions. Again, always check your local laws. Loading some of this ammunition in pistols, that would make it armor piercing rounds and subject to certain regulations. 879, 941, 977. Easy enough on this. Our 1903 A3 M2 armor piercing was right there. Then our M995 was right there. Our 62 grain AP was right there. And the second shot was down there. Now that is about 3 inches from that shot. Then our brass 8.6 black, number 1, the AP, number 2, then the API right there. That bullet is sticking out of there. Place those bets in the comments below. Oh, R.A.N.G.E, we have 1 penetration only from that 62 grain Swiss P AP down there. I wonder, based on the construction of the ceramic, the way that cracks propagate in the ceramic to stop those threats and eat up those projectiles, if it's just cracking quite a lot, so those shots are hard to contend with because of cracking. But interesting that we stopped our little 8.6 black guys. Again, I don't know how many hundreds of yards downrange that would equate to if you fired it from 338 Lapua. I'd have to imagine it's over 1,000 yards. We'll end this test with the U.S. Army's new hotness. This is 6.8 by 51 millimeters or 277 Fury. This particular cartridge's claim to fame is its hybrid case. It's got a little stainless steel or steel case head and then a brass body. Pressures on this are upwards of 80,000 PSI. Conventionally, most Magnum calibers like 300 Win Mag top out around 62 to 65,000 PSI. This is 113 grain reduced range ammunition, or RRA. It is operating north of 75,000 PSI and slightly below 80,000 PSI. We've chronographed these at over 3,200 feet per second from our 16-inch MCX Spear that we have here. 3192. 3239. Well, folks, there's a lot of alumina all over my range today from shooting these plates, but I think we've proven that, given their original design parameters of NIJ 04, that dropping them was not the best idea in the world. And had I thought about it, I should have bought 2 more plates to do the test. And then if I had that discrepancy, I should have reached out to Highcom first before posting the video. But we live and learn. We all make mistakes. Our 6.8 shot number 1 and then number 2. Place those bets in the comments below. Oh, R.A.N.G.E. We have penetrations from both of those rounds clean through and through. We have into our 3A backer and, oh, stopped. Interesting. Cool. So this particular material isn't designed for catching that speed once it makes it through the strike face, and it's already compromised, folks. But our 3A backer did its job. Back face on this guy right here is right around 51 millimeters, and this guy down here was right around 28 millimeters. So fairly impressive after taking those other shots. And again, M2 AP on that one and single shot. Back face on my clay is nothing. Paging Dr. Matt to surgery, paging Dr. Matt to surgery. Now, for a fan favorite, the teardown. That's where we get to look at the guts of this plate to see what kind of materials they're using. We kind of already know what they're using because this is a retest, but here is our backer on plate number 8. Confirmed the only penetrations were the Swiss P AP and the 2 6.8s, but the 6.8s were stopped in our 3A backer. Here's what's left of our strike face. Again, we're using alumina. That's the white ceramic, known for being fairly robust, but it's also heavy. I measured that right around 400 thousandths. Here is our backer. It is a form of E-glass woven, 310 thousandths. There's the back. There's like a little laminating layer on there. And then in the front is kind of a crack arrestor, if you want to call it that, or laminating layer. 0.036 inches thick. Now, this is why I couldn't hear any cracks if there were any on the last plate, because this was in front of it. Now, we took that inspection plate that we have here, number 9. This one was drop tested. I've taken it apart, and unfortunately, I can't see any cracking on it because of this front layer here. I can't separate the two either, but that doesn't mean that there isn't some kind of air pocket in there. If we can, I'll send that to Highcom or somebody maybe that could x-ray it for us for any cracks, but I don't know if I'll be able to get that apart very easily now that it's been, I don't know, maybe autoclaved or vacuum bagged or something, and there may be some adhesives between those two, but I don't see any cracks on that. We checked all the other plates. There were no any additional penetrations that we already didn't denote in the little videos. So there you guys have it. Your choice, whether you're looking at a plate like this that fits your budget. I think this would be quite an upgrade over a steel offering. Well, folks, just like you all, I'm only human, and I do make mistakes from time to time. I think I learned something here today by doing this 4AS4 retest. Going forward, if we procure plates either from followers donating them, or we have funds and we purchase them without the manufacturer knowing, and we shoot them and we have any kind of discrepancies, I'm going to be more adamant about contacting the manufacturer or the retailer, multiple times to get either a follow-up email or a call so that we can go over these discrepancies. And if they feel that there's something that I did wrong, we can talk to them about getting some more of these plates to redo that testing before we publicly post the things and create a big ruckus out of all of them. In hindsight, this 4AS4 plate is an older design and was only meant to meet the NIJ 04 standards. They did shoot it at later dates to the NIJ 06 threat standard, but that precludes the drop testing and submersion testing. I would like to ask manufacturers, Highcom in this case, that they should denote that in any of their literature if they have an older design that they brought back online for either government contracts or whatever, that if they're doing the newer threat standards and they don't do any of the preconditioning tests, they should denote that in any of the literature so that we don't have any confusion. Ultimately, I shouldn't have drop tested both plates, or I should have bought a third. But like I said, we learned a lesson here today, and going forward, we're trying to do better. Our plates throughout all the testing stopped our M2 armor piercing at the specified velocity. These plates were capable of doing multiple hits even after stopping that M2 armor piercing, and we stopped some threats that I thought were pretty cool well outside of the purview of the NIJ, including our M995 and that Swiss PAP hardcore 62 grain load, as well as our 6.8, although that did make it through that woven E-glass backer, but our 3A stopped it. On a positive note, if you did purchase these plates and you were looking to add a little more durability to them, now again, we're going to recommend that you don't belly flop on them because they're not an 06 plate. But if you were to find some high density foam like this, maybe a yoga mat or something, or even your plate carrier, if it has any type of cushioning in it, is going to go a long ways to help prevent that strike face from cracking. I'll have to see if I can find anyone who has the ability to x-ray the plate that we did drop test and take apart to see if there's any cracks in that strike face, because I can't get that thing apart. With all that being said, it's time for me to get the heck out of here. But at the end of all my videos, I take a moment to thank all those who help make these possible, because there's a lot that goes into them. Number one is my family. Amy and Deacon came out here to help me get this done today. A big thank you to them. Deacon would like to remind you all to like, subscribe, and share this video so it can reach the masses, especially those that may be a little on the weary side after seeing the first test. Number two are my Patreon, Subscribe Star, and YouTube channel memberships. I have a campsite in the description below. It's a landing page, and there's different affiliate and discount tracking links in there. So if you're looking at making any purchases and you want to say thank you to the channel, that's what those are there for. Number three are a pair of my followers who would like to remain anonymous, who donated both of their pairs of plates so that we had a wide sample size to do this retest. Number four is Chase Tactical. Again, in full transparency, sent me another 6 of those 4AS4 plates to destroy so that we could have a wide data set. I want to rebuild the chain of trust that we have with this particular plate. Highcom is the manufacturer, Chase Tactical is the reseller, and then Tactical Shit, I do believe, is a distributor that has this current deal with this 4AS4 plate for these overruns. And Chase Tactical said that they don't shoot any of these plates for threat validation anymore. They rely on Highcom. Highcom has a long history of producing quality products, so they sent these over so that we could rebuild that chain of trust so you guys would have confidence in these plates. Number five is Highcom, who provided me with some insight and those certifications on a phone call so that we had that data to present to you guys that these plates in a lab setting are capable of stopping the M2 armor piercing threat at the level 4 specifications. And of course, number six is you all for watching. Until next time, I'll catch you at the range.